Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Jessica Jones. This is the originally Netflix series set in the Marvel Universe, not necessarily MCU. Some people will argue all those little details as to whether it's properly in the MCU or not. It really doesn't matter because of a multiverse that exists. This version of Jessica Jones may or may not be in the MCU. It does not matter. This is a series from 2015 to 2019, 3 seasons. Each of the episodes are about 50 or so, 54, this first one, minutes long. And this is a kind of, I don't want to spoil anything, okay? I don't want to spoil anything for anybody because a lot of people may not have watched this. But I can tell you this right now, this is not for children. Maybe mature children, if you have really mature children, sure. But this is not for kids. Yes, it's part of the Marvel Universe. Eventually she teams up with people like Daredevil and Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Elektra. And yeah, all these things happen. But Jessica is played by Kristen Ritter, by the way, who I love and I have quite a crush on, because she's just fantastic. She does drama, you know her from Breaking Bad. She does comedy in The Bee in Apartment 23, and she does this. She's not a hero. She's not a villain. To sort of, she's a person with powers because. I'm not spoiling anything there because why would the Marvel Universe do a story about somebody who is not powered, or if they weren't powered, not have some sort of heroic or villainous angle? Yeah. So, what's her connection? Well, she has a lot of connections, comics especially, but in this series, this is the kind of series that you can literally watch and enjoy without having any knowledge of any part of the Marvel Universe whatsoever. Do you like mysteries? Do you like detective murder drama kind of things? Well, this is it, and this is this corner of the Marvel Universe. I'm going to say MCU. I'm going to say the Marvel Cinematic Universe because now Disney owns it officially, fully. It's. I'm just going to say MCU. We're going to assume that it's part of the greater tapestry. But it doesn't have to be. You don't have to know what happened in Captain America Winter Soldier or 3 episodes in on Ms. Marvel and, you know, the entire Thanos saga. You don't need to know anything about any of that. This is very self-contained until, of course, it crosses over with the other characters in the Netflix series, eventually building to the Defenders series. But especially for this first season, which in itself is, it just feels like maybe a quadrilogy of movies. I think there's like 8 episodes in a season. Let me make absolutely sure. 13. Oh no, this is when we're still doing 13 seasons. Oh yeah. Okay, it's more than a quadrilogy. It's the reason why. I gotta be very careful with this. It's not like there isn't a struggle between good and evil, but she is very much on the fringes of this. You know how Marvel tells stories about normal people put in extraordinary circumstances. Spider-Man, as we saw yesterday, is a kid. He's a high school kid and eventually a college kid and a grown adult who just was a guy who happened to get bitten by a spider, and suddenly responsibility has been forced upon him, and he was raised by good people who taught him that with great power comes great responsibility. Jessica never had that, necessarily. We don't know what her full story is from the first episode. I do know it. I read the comics, and I watched this entire series. But I forgot what happened in this first episode, and I'm still reeling from the final minutes of it. It's a fantastic pilot, because it rather than going, this is who she is and there's all the answers you need to know. No, it keeps throwing questions at you. It keeps you wanting to know a little bit more about her. She's a little bit conflicted. This woman runs a detective agency called Alias Investigations. By the way, if you want to read Jessica in the comics, big warning, beyond the title of her series is called Alias. Why is this series not called Alias? Because there's already a series called Alias that Disney already owns through ABC, starring Jennifer Garner. So when Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Gaydos created Jessica Jones, they created a comic series called Alias rather than Alias Investigations. Either way, it's it throws a reference to how villains tend to have secret identities. Well, Jessica in the comics has a tendency to root out sort of different issues that sometimes connect to the superhero universe. Her very first case dealt with Captain America and a bit of a scandal regarding him, or a supposed scandal. Story-wise, let's just say during this period in the early 2000s when she was first introduced, Marvel was tossing away the comics code, which was sort of a pseudo self-regulating organization that kept certain things from being discussed or featured in comics for many decades in order to appease the people who thought it was made by the devil, like pinball and rock and roll. Yes, the seduction of the innocent came through pinball, rock and roll, and comic books. Just the way it is. In this case, Jessica's a very normal person. She just happens to have abilities. I'm not going to tell you what those abilities are, and they try to keep them as vague as possible. It's not too complex. You can pretty much figure them out as they go along. But in the comics, Jessica is an investigator, and I also mention this. Because of the comics code being thrown away, the very first issue, the very first page, the very first word spoken is the F word. Spoken by her. Well, the comic book version. The comics can do a whole lot more than even a Netflix series can do. In this case, the F word was the first time the F word was ever spoken in a Marvel comic. I don't know about the magazines of the 70s, like the Kung Fu stuff and the horror stuff. I doubt it, but I don't know. As far as I know, Jessica Jones is responsible for saying the first F-bomb in comics. And that was in the 2000s. Yeah. So, she's a little rough around the edges in the series as well. She's a woman who, by all appearances, is a normal person beyond the fact that she's really difficult to get along with, has a horrible attitude, is really just in it for the money, and doesn't seem to care about anybody but herself when she's given tasks by a corporation leader, a certain CEO, played by Carrie-Anne Moss. Yeah, you've seen her recently in the Star Wars The Acolyte series, playing a Jedi, and she was also in The Matrix, but as Trinity. But she takes dirty jobs that nobody else can accomplish. Her abilities sort of help her out in that. But the point of this series is very much not surrounding her abilities. They're an aspect, but it's not the core of the story. It's like if it's Spider-Man, oh, he's going to be crawling walls and shooting webs. Captain America, he's going to be throwing the shield and talking about America. Iron Man, armor. Jessica, powers just are kind of useful. They're useful tools. In this, we get to discover, and I'm going to be very careful. I do not want to spoil this because even though I used purple in my background, which was not an accident, this is very intentional for those of you who know what I'm talking about. Purple is a conscious choice by me, even though I only used it like 2 days ago. I tried to rotate them up where it's appropriate. As we get to know Jessica, she's given a case that seems pretty standard. Girl has disappeared. It's assumed that she's run off with a cute boy and just blowing the parents' money. When parents come to her to help her, to get help from Jessica to find their daughter, Jessica takes on the case, and you see a little crack in the armor. You get to see that she might have a heart. for cases like this. She might, when she sees, especially women in distress, possibly by a guy who would be taking advantage of them, which all of her instincts tell her is possibly the case, well, she steps in. And she doesn't consider herself a hero by any means, but she steps in. And what she discovers is something a whole lot more terrifying than she could have imagined. She's a woman who is adrift. She spends a lot of her time drunk. She is just sort of to quell the pain. She's a woman dealing with trauma. And it's not necessarily super heroic or a super powered trauma, but it's trauma that a lot of people, specifically also women, have dealt with. It's just, in this case, on another level. And it's just one part of the story. It's kind of the great thing about this first episode, this pilot, is that it is, while the story, the overall story, mission kind of thing, is self-contained, it is the first big stepping stone into the rest of the season, as it should be. It should make you want to keep watching. And I'm almost tempted to just blow through the whole first season again. I really want to tell you who the villain is. And if you don't know, I really, really, really want to tell you. I'm not going to say it. But let's just say he used to be a doctor. Yeah. So, so in this, we get to see a bunch of other characters, including a reference throughout of a certain person named Trish. She seems like a radio host, some kind of celebrity of sorts. She shows up in like billboards and bus ads and things like that, wherever Jessica's walking around. She seems pretty important. Well, yes, she is important, and she'll come into play. She comes into play in this episode a little bit, and as things go on throughout this series. But I want to point this out, that while her name is Trish, her name is Patricia Walker, and most people know her as Patsy Walker. And while Jessica Jones was only created in the 2000s, Patsy Walker, the character that Trish is based on, goes back to the days older than Marvel. We're talking about 1944. World War II is still going on. This is when Marvel, or its previous incarnation, which I can't remember if it was Timely or Atlas, they were making like romance and like other kind of comics, and one of the characters was a model named Patsy Walker. She eventually got rolled into the Marvel universe proper as Hellcat. Yeah, she became a superhero in her own right. Still a model, hanging out with Millie and such, but she's also kind of a stylish, fun, and little intense fighter kind of hero with a Hellcat theme, and a yellow outfit, black mask kind of thing. Unfortunately, this is not a huge spoiler, but we don't get to see her in any kind of superheroic state. It's just a full-on reference, making use of this character in this way. It would have been cool to see her take on that role, but she is important in other ways. And yes, you will probably find a reference or two throughout this series that references the character as she originally was envisioned. So yeah, this is the kind of show, I'm going to say, this is the kind of series that can be traumatic for a number of people, and I can't stress this enough. This is not for kids. The comic book, you're like, I want to read the comic book. It is not for kids. You need to be an adult. You really should be an adult to get the Alias comic series. They have them in like trade paperbacks and omnibuses and all sorts of other stuff. like compendiums of the entire series, and it's kind of great. It's looking at the Marvel Universe in a whole different way. So I'm doing my comic book recommendation here, but this series I recommend highly. One of the cool things that I found in rewatching this first episode is something I did not expect to see. You gotta be careful with this. There's a character in this that is the focus of one of Jessica's investigations. Her name is Hope. And she needs to be found. The actress who plays her, I gotta find her name. Why she's probably way down in the. I've already forgotten her name, but she's way down in the list here, because I think she only appears in this episode and maybe a few more episodes, in recurrences. But she ends up being. His name's Aaron. Aaron, come on, Aaron. She ends up being part of The Boys on Amazon. She plays Starlight. Looking at when I saw her, I'm like, wait, that's Starlight? The funny thing is that Starlight, if you've watched The Boys on Amazon, is also based on a comic book, and it makes this show look like Mickey Mouse Club. Starlight in this is a country girl, Midwestern, innocent, blonde, beautiful Starlight. I'm talking about Starlight in The Boys. And she ends up becoming part of the big superhero conglomerate in the big city kind of thing, and trying to be the voice of hope and goodness and reason, thinking that it is a good place to be, where everybody else is pretty much awful, just awful. The most heroic characters in the series are just awful people for the most part. The funny thing is, there's a neat little connection between this, and I'm going to reference the comics because this is not brought up in this Marvel's cinematic universe, because it can't, because it doesn't work that way. At one point, and this is going to be some really convoluted, but Jessica, when she first got her powers, when she was younger, she was a superhero named Jewel. And she was part of the Avengers. Yeah. She kind of got retrofitted into there, but something happened to her, something pretty traumatic, that made her stop being a hero. And what that was is this first season right here. This Jessica was never a hero, never a superhero, never put on the tights and flew around and fought crime or anything. She was just a person who was caught in a really bad place and taken to an even worse place. So I highly recommend this to people who can handle this. This first episode is upsetting because I forgot how it ended. But it also acts as a rallying cry for the rest of the season. So I highly recommend this for those of you who have not watched it, or have not watched it in a while and might have a better grip on some of the more darker elements of the Marvel Universe. Yeah, you're going to see Luke Cage make an appearance in this one. Kind of a big appearance in this one. You won't see Daredevil in this yet, but Matt, sorry. Why can't I say his name? Oh my, Matt Murdock. Jeez. Okay, my brain it's late. Jessica Jones, formerly of Netflix, now on Disney Plus. 3 seasons, 39 episodes plus Defenders. Fall in love with Kristen Ritter. She's just fantastic. I can't recommend this enough. It's the great thing about the Marvel Universe in this, whether it was put on Netflix or Disney Plus or in the theaters or whatever, the strength of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that it has a diversity of stories and ways to tell stories as well as characters. Not everybody has to be a good, righteous, heroic from the start, good-natured person. She's miserable. And she just as soon as punch you as to say thanks. She doesn't believe herself to be a good person. And that's the story being told here. Is she? Is she, despite what she thinks she is? And how does she deal with her trauma? This could be triggering to some people. Just saying. But it is not a light. It's not a light story. There's humor in it throughout. Obviously, she's fantastically funny. But yeah, just Morty, just take it easy. If you can't, I don't know if I'd binge this season, but you might wanna once that first episode finishes. Tell me what you think. If you don't agree, whatever. But I'm open to responses. Let's pick tomorrow's episode. Talked almost an hour now for the last 2 days total, 113, about Marvel stuff. Ah, dang it. Okay, 113, right? Yeah, 113, and it's already been taken. It should be set to not take repeats, but this was the Hubble's Cosmic Journey episode. So we're going to pick another number. We're just a few days, maybe a week and a half maybe, away from me resetting the entire list, scraping away all the old stuff I've already watched, any of the dupes, and then putting some brand new stuff onto the selection. But 222. Pretty sure we haven't had that. I don't remember ever seeing that number come up. Okay. We're back to documentaries. But this is, again, just like the last one we had, which was about the Disney cruise ship. This one is very different, but still about architecture to a certain degree. This is about saving a humongous piece of history. It's called Saving Notre Dame. Or Notre Dame. Either way, Saving Notre Dame on the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.